Welcome to the Strackhouse, a show about inspiring women making change. I'm your host, Sarah Strackhouse. Join us to hear their incredible stories. Well, thank you so much for joining us for another awesome episode. We have another wonderful guest, Melissa Pocza. She is a broker and property manager by day. At the same time, she also owns an incredible boutique called Mom Queen. She has a full brand. She's also an author. Just a really, really cool story. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and one of those things that I didn't put in there was also Mrs. Texas, 2 times around, Mrs. International.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of your titles? Because I feel like that's so cool.
Right? I've had a very fulfilling life. And the one thing I've discovered is I don't like the word no. Because
Okay.
when someone tells me no, I want to prove them wrong, right? So I started in the pageant world, and I've actually broken a little history, pageant history. You know, people in the pageant world are familiar. I'm the only Mrs. Texas that's ever won twice. And I have probably a total of 7 titles in my past.
Wow.
And so, yes, but I finished and hung up my heels at my reigning crown of Mrs. International. And I traveled all the countries. I think I did 7 countries in like 5 days.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what was that like?
It was very fulfilling. So my platform was child abuse awareness. And so I did a lot of orphanages. I did father raise in Thailand. I went to so many different Cambodia, so many different countries to serve the abandoned and abused children.
So why was that your platform? And I know you kind of talked a little bit about this and about growing up, and your family actually took in a couple of children. Can you talk a little bit about why that was so important?
I really think that, God has a plan for a lot of us and brings us full circle, whether it be God or whoever you believe in personally, karma, whatever it is for you. But for me, I really think that God brought me full circle. I grew up in the inner city of Detroit, like back in the late 90s. This wasn't back in the day. This was back in the late 90s, and I was at like 15, But I was born and raised in the city of Detroit, in the heart of Detroit. And I had not an easy life, not an easy childhood. And I was exposed to so much. And I grew up with the help of Children's Alliance and Boys and Girls Club and Big Brothers Big Sisters. I mean, those were my safe havens.
Yeah.
So all of my life, I really think that those are the people and the organizations that stood by my family and I, that I think it's time to pay it back. And that was my whole life mission. Since I was like 17, I think I signed back up to give back to the organizations that gave my family and I so much. But wrap it up full circle, I ended up marrying a husband whose family has done the same to several of my nieces and nephews. And It's pretty phenomenal and pretty neat, And I think that was so many times in my life, there was opportunities to present myself. I always tried to hide who I was and hide my past. But so many times things were presented to me and opportunities came about where I had to open up and had to disclose that. And I really think I'd started living my full life once I did.
Yeah. And I know you talked a little bit about, you said you grew up with a hard past. And in your book, I know you talk about a little bit about family who struggled with a little bit of drug abuse or just a lot of, troubles that I think people can really relate to.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about what got you kind of into the pageantry world and kind of pulled you out of that? I know you said it was a lot of these programs, and I also know that you modeled when you were younger. Can you talk a little bit about kind of that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, my grandparents had to step in when you're in a lot of those programs, and, my mom was working so much, and there was a lot of things that were going on in my life, and my grandparents, stepped in to save the day. And so my grandma always told me, she's like every grandma, they believe that you raise the moon, like you hung the moon and you're the stars of the sky. And, so she's always thought, that I should be in pageants. And we'd watch Miss USA together, Miss Teen USA. And I was like, why can't I do that? And just opportunity, I always felt in my heart like I was, didn't give myself enough credit. And I thought opportunity just didn't come to girls like me. I just thought that, whatever, I just watched it on TV. And I continue basketball. I mean, I've been this big since I was 11 years old. I've been 6 feet tall since I was 11 years old, and I just thought that was my thing.
Right.
And I was clumsy in heels, so there was no way. And
you're an athlete. That was your passion.
Means. And pageants are expensive, and we found that after we signed up.
Right.
But, and I didn't have the means to afford that. And so at that time, my grandma signed me up for my first pageant. And from then and then I lost her right after.
Oh.
And so it was like I owed myself. I felt like I owed myself something. And then you get the itch, and then you've got, like, somebody told me no. I got so close. And girl, this is back in the day when there was like 380 contestants.
Right.
You know, Alan Thicke was our host. It was on national TV, and it was a big deal.
Everyone watched it, sat down
Everyone
to
watched
watch
it.
it.
Even on a state level, it was, you know, all aired all over the state.
Yeah.
And so I was in the Miss
this was in Michigan.
I was in the Miss Michigan Teen USA was my first year. And I mean, I was a beast, you know, and my dress was like 8 inches too short. I didn't know what I was doing, but apparently I was doing something right. Because I ended up placing in top 5 every time, and every time I had won a scholarship.
Wow.
So once I saw that, and I knew, you know, we couldn't afford going to school, and you know, academics always came challenging for me. I would work hard, but that was going to be my way to school. That was going to be my ticket out. I always felt. I always felt that was going to be my ticket out. And then I got the itch, and every year I tried harder. I got closer and closer and closer until I actually ended up winning.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and then from there,
What was that feeling like?
Right?
Yeah, I mean, that must have been crazy.
It was. So, I don't know. I'm not sure, like, that first time.
Yeah.
Because there was so much, like, sadness, because I was like, oh, I wish my grandma was here. Or, you know, it was just, but then you're like, you get the itch. So I thought I was done. I thought I was done. I got picked up in the modeling career, met my husband. Long story short, you know, zoom fast,
Right.
20 years.
You're in Texas. Yeah.
And my mom calls me one day, and she's like, hey, did you know that and I was trying to get pregnant with my first son.
Okay.
And so she said, did you know there's a Mrs. division? And I was like, Ma.
Oh, no.
Seriously? No. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, she goes, what you need is a distraction. You know, as much as I love the woman, but I hate it that she's always right, and
Right.
that's exactly what I needed. Because it worked every time.
These moms, I'll tell you what.
It worked every time. Every kid got pregnant.
Yeah.
And so, and sure enough, I signed up. I didn't know what I was getting into. Texas is a different ball game.
Oh, yeah. A lot of pageantry down
girl,
here.
Yeah, it's a different ball game.
Yep.
And the misses. I mean,
Yeah.
they're very competitive.
Oh, I'm
you know?
sure. Yeah. I mean, even now, just, you know, being here, I've been here for a few years now. I mean, you just see everyone presents themselves, first
Yes.
off, just in normal life in an incredible way, not to mention the pageant
Right.
world.
It's like an Instagram feed.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I ended up getting so close, not knowing what I was getting into, and so I was like, you know what, I'll try it again. Got pregnant, had a baby, my first baby, and I was like, I'll try it again, and ended up winning.
Wow.
And then that was done, and then I found out there was other systems. Like there's more than, you know, there's the USA and America, and there's 2 different, you know. And I was like, ooh, you know, and I'm always one.
Keep going.
I'm always one to say, you know, try to break records, and so I ended up being one of the top 3. Like I ended up winning Texas United States, Texas America, and then I ended up, when they lifted the ban, usually when you win, you can never come back.
Right.
Well, then there was a reality show at the time on Bravo and they wanted some more juice on the system. So they're like, well, we'll let foreigners come back. And I was like, my husband, we were at one of
Wow.
the dinner parties. My husband was like, she'll try it. I'm like, what?
This is news. Yeah. Will I?
And I did. I went back in the ring 7 years later as a totally different person. too.
Yeah. And with kids who have grown.
More comfortable in my skin. I never really revealed my story my entire pageant career, until the very, very end after I had won. I never liked a symphony. I never liked a sad story. I never wanted anybody's sympathy.
Yeah.
And I never brought it up. And it turns out what I needed to discover through that 20-year journey, 24-year journey, was the greatest thing about me. That was my sparkle. That is my sparkle, and that's what makes me. And so it's nice to finally be comfortable in your skin.
Yeah, and you know what? I love your story, especially because, you know, that's exactly what I want this show to be. I want this show to be something where people can see what you've come through, can relate to you, say, hey, that's my story too.
Yes.
And see how far you've come. You know, you're a business owner, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're all these things, you're successful,
Yeah.
and feel like that they can come through it too. So I love that you're sharing your story. And I know that you kind of talked in here that you want to also empower women with the many things that you've learned through self-discovery. I mean, talk a little bit about once kind of the whole pageantry world was over, why you took that next step and kind of created your brand.
Right? So that came on weird too.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. So I ended up, and I'm always an overachiever. Like I can never sit still. And so that's why he's like, sit still.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can never sit still.
Right.
And I'm always up for a challenge. And I'm always going to try something once, you know? I don't pass up opportunity. And I think it's a shame when girls do. I really do. Because every day comes opportunity. You might not see it,
Right.
you know, but it's there. And so I ended up going back to work, and I work with family. My husband and I are in a huge global manufacturing business, and I run all the real estate portions of it. And so, you know, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
You know, it's like I have my children, you know, they're in sports or this or that. And,
Right.
and I've done everything you can in the pageant world, unless there's a grandma thing
Right.
going on. You know, I
Oh,
don't
that'd
know
be so
about.
cute, though. Oh my God, that'd be adorable.
You know, I
You
was
should
like,
start
so
one.
what now? You know, so I got a few other acronyms behind my licenses, you know, my
Sure.
broker's license. I was like, okay, I can specialize in this, I can specialize in that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fulfilling me. And so then I've gotten a ton of requests of people to coach. Will you coach me? Will you coach me? And I was like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. There were several reservations I had about it. And I was like, you know what? I cannot be responsible for somebody like, hey, you need to work on this or you need to work on this. And they don't put that taco down.
Right.
Or they don't choose to take that opportunity to go
Right.
at a 7 o'clock appearance when, you know, they had other things planned or,
Yeah.
you know, and I was like, I don't want to be that responsible.
Right. Well, it's just
but
not
I
where
can
your
motivate.
passion is.
Yeah. And I can motivate. And so I started going back to work with family, and it's hard. And when pressure's on, you know, it's just like you get upset with your coworkers, but I can't do that. They're family.
Right.
And so I started becoming very negative, you know, negative and pessimistic about people not pulling their weight or things like that. I let little things get to me that I normally never did. And my husband made the comment, well, you should compete again because you're your happiest self, because you don't have time to worry about the negativity.
Yeah.
And I stress in my book so many times, when time is some people's worst enemy, because it allows to open up for the drama and it allows things in your life that you shouldn't have time
It
for.
allows you to overthink,
Period.
which
allows
I think
you
is
to
scary.
overthink so many, you know,
Yeah.
and so many negativities.
You can go in that downward spiral really
Real
quickly
fast.
if you have too much time to think. You know, I was
Yeah.
just talking to my mom about that the other day, and she was like, you know, it was so good that you were involved in sports or this or that
Yeah.
growing up because you didn't get in your head too much. And I think,
Just to keep you out of trouble.
yeah,
There's
keep
so
you out of
many
trouble. Reflection's
positives.
good,
Right.
But yeah,
Yes.
so that's incredible. And now I know that you're juggling like a ton of things.
Right.
And you just wrote a book. Can you talk a little bit about your book?
Yeah, it's called Basic B.
Okay.
Everybody here. Here's their Basic B.
I love it.
And so, yeah, it just goes about my story. It's not just for the sparkle world. It's just like a little women's lifting and empowerment book. It's a great beach read. But it also, people would always tell me in my pageant journey, I never really got to know you. Well, my past, you just don't open up to strangers.
Yeah.
Just not in my personality.
Right,
you
right.
know? And so it's like, I'm not a hugger. I'm
Just
like,
not used to
hey,
it, yeah.
you know? And so I'm a tough girl. You know, I'm
Yeah.
a tough cookie. I was raised that way. And so it just opens up and learn more about me. But also I've had so many women come to me and say, oh my gosh, I relate. Oh my gosh, I relate. And I think that's the most important thing. And I talk about it in several chapters is women are so hard on other women. And I signed up to be in a competitive world.
I was going to say, I know
Yeah.
you say competitiveness is healthy to a certain degree.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's very healthy. The world needs it. You know, if not, we'd all be just shopping on Amazon.
Right.
The
We'd
world
all be
needs
laissez
it.
faire. Yeah.
Yes, to self-improvement, everything. We all need a healthy competition. And so, yeah, it also, if so many people are like, hey, it can relate. I never knew that. And it's true that women can open up. And I think when we open up our vulnerabilities is when we're most beautiful and most powerful. And that's when we are most relatable to other women. And it took me just 40 years to figure that out. That's
Casual.
all.
That's also, you do not look 40. I would
you. I
not
just turned
ever
40
think that.
last week.
Oh, happy birthday. But if someone's kind of, they're teetering on that world, right? So they either just kind of pulled themselves out of something, they don't know what's next, or they accomplish this big goal and they're starting to have that negativity, that time, and they don't know what that next chapter is. What would you tell them?
Get off your feet. Get off your feet. Get off your hanny and go. I always tell, like, join something. Get yourself out there. Push yourself out there. In my book, I talk about like girls that like, hey, they want to get healthy, or if you want to get healthy, are you going to join a wine club?
Nope.
No. You're going to join a fitness group or a mom's club. Surround yourself with a cheerleading group with the girls that you want to be like. And I'll tell you what, as many people are like, why are you 30-some, 40-some in the pageant world? Well, you know what? It put me around women that were driven, that give back.
That were focused.
That are focused, yes, and want more in life. And everybody deserves more.
Absolutely. And I think my mom always says birds of a feather flock together. So surrounding
Absolutely.
yourself with that kind of thing is amazing. And you all had a passion for and a mission.
Yeah.
So I think that's so important too.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about why your book is basic? Why that word?
We were
jumped
coming
out
up
at you?
with a book title,
Okay.
and for months, and everybody was trying to get me a little bit more out of my shell, a little bit more out of my shell. And the one thing I never wanted to do is disrespect my family, because we've gone through so much,
Yeah.
you know, and we're still together, and that speaks volumes, you know. And they're my rock. They're who I look up to. So I'm always been a closed book, and they're trying to get me out of my shell, and they're like, hey, well, what is it about you? There's something, I was like, there's nothing about me. I'm just basic. I drive a white Lexus just like every other
Person
girl
here
in the
Dallas.
world.
Yeah.
I'm like, I like what's on the normal radio station. I like this. If you say like, hey, I like my vanilla. And so she had sent me it. She goes, what are you doing right now? I go, I'm in the drive-thru in Starbucks in my yoga pants, my white Lexus. I go, there's nothing, I'm everything basic. So what makes me special is that I just never gave up.
Yeah.
And so that's where we came up. I'm like, I'm just your basic bee.
Yeah.
And then we came up with it, and we already had it in, and then I guess there were some other books that were coming out, but that just published right before mine. And I was like, well, what are we changing now? And they're like, do you want to start 10 months of lost work?
Right.
I'm like, let's go with it.
And you know what? So obviously, I can't say the full word because we want to be able to promote
Yeah.
this video, but it's, B, can I spell it?
It's actually an exclamation point with a crown.
B exclamation
Yeah.
point TCH. But I love that because you're owning who you are. You're talking about, and I think people I think the whole word basic a lot of times gets a really bad connotation.
Right.
Because it could mean that I think it's surrounding that kind of Instagram, that you have a Starbucks card and that, kind
Yeah.
of exactly what you said, which is funny. But I also think it's okay to be who you
It's
are.
totally
There's so
okay.
much more depth to people that we don't realize. Behind the screen, you're so much more than that.
Right.
So I love that you called it that.
My husband, when I first came up with the title, I was like, is that too much? Or he goes, no. He goes, his outlook on it, he was like, I think it suits you so well. And I was like, what do you mean it suits me?
But beg your pardon. Yeah.
You're not allowed to say that.
Yeah, only
And he was
I'm
like-
allowed to call myself
I
that.
know.
Yeah.
And he goes, no. He goes, all your life you've been judged. When I stepped into the Spark world, I was judged. When I stepped into Boys and Girls Club, Children's Advocacy Center, everyone you step, when I step into Target, I mean, you're judged for your appearance and your exterior. And that's exactly what this book does, is when you see the title, you automatically assume something.
Yep.
But when you open it, it's something totally different. So it's a lesson learned. And in the first review I got, the girl didn't even open the book. And I was in tears. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be an utter fail.
Oh.
And so she's like, she only read like 3 pages or something like that. And I was like, sister, you're judging a book by its cover. Because all she did is see my face on that thing,
Yep.
read my history, and then just assume, and that's exactly what the
And the book is
stereotypical-
amazing. I
Thank
mean,
you so much.
I read the book, and funny you said, I read it while sitting on the beach.
really?
Yeah. But it really was. It had depth to it, and I think that's a really cool part about you. Like, obviously, those watching,
Yeah.
you're beautiful, you're tall, you're fit, and
Thanks.
you got this, kind of beautiful aura about you. But there's so much more to that, and I think that people really are so quick to judge.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. And it talks about that all the time. The entire book is about that. Is pretty much about how women can be hard on each other.
Yeah.
And we all do it. I mean, it's life.
And no matter what, I think, even if you say, oh, I don't want to judge people, or I'm not
Yeah.
judgmental, I'm not prejudiced, this or
We're
that,
human.
but we're human. And people immediately do have a snap judgment, no matter what you are, or who you think, how above judgment you think
Right.
you are. I think it's natural that people do it.
Yeah.
You have no idea that you were packing, half part of the time while you were competing.
Yes. Yeah. When I moved to Texas, Detroit, at that time, you couldn't carry a gun.
Yeah.
And my sister-in-law and I were the ones that but I needed it because I was at that time property manager. And
Yeah.
I was like, it's safe for me.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was a family affair, and it's a big thing. I mean, we're huge in the gun industry. We are in a lot of their packaging, so a lot of times, they'll send us, new gun manufacturers will send us a case to make a case for it, and so we'll go test it out, and
Right.
it's just a family. Like, it's normal we're in Texas.
Yeah.
So it's
Well-
normal to shoot skeet and
Right.
have some margaritas.
Well, and I'm also like a very an advocate for safe and responsible gun ownership, and I think that's so cool that you're taking that step to protect yourself and your family, while being this beautiful, glamorous woman. So I think you don't have to be one or the other.
My husband makes fun, still to this day, not so much, I've a little let loose a little bit, but I used to lock my car in the garage, lock the garage door, lock the bedroom door, and he goes, we're not in Detroit anymore.
Right.
What are you doing? I was
They're
like,
not going to get through
habit.
8 layers. Yeah.
It's a habit. It's just the way, I grew up.
Yeah.
So. Looking out.
I love that. Yeah. Well, I feel like I could talk to you forever, but I know we kind of got to wrap things up soon. But I do want to ask you, if someone is watching this show and they, everything else goes over the head, what's one thing you want them to take away from it?
It's to find you a group of girls. I think that's the key. That's the same thing with my Mom Queen brand and the boutique I started. I always have a group of girls, and they're so different. And let them bring, I have my close friends. One of them is a huge Christian. I want to be more like her because she's more Christian. The other one she's the sweetest thing and can't see anybody's faults. I want to be like her. They all have characteristics that I feed from, and hopefully I can benefit them in some way. But the same thing with my girls in Mom Queen Boutique. Everybody behind the scenes, we all have something to give, and I feed from each of them. And the same thing with the girls and the group that we have a little queen group on Facebook. Check it out, momqueenboutique.com.
Yep.
And same thing, we all feed off of each other and we inspire each other. And it's the greatest thing. And my husband's like, the one thing that you've created is community. And I never thought about that. And I was like, you know what, that's pretty powerful.
When you're using social media for good. And online and digital for good, and I think that's so important because there's so many people behind their screen with negativity. So I think that's incredible that you're doing
we get it too, but
I'm sure. Last question, and then I want to make sure that everyone can find out where to reach you. If your grandmother could see you now, what do you think she would say?
So I have 2 grandmas, and I lost them both during the process. The one would be so proud of me. I lost her when I was young, competing. I think it was 19. And she'd be proud. She'd be really, really proud. My other grandma, she's always, tell me, she's always the other one to put me in the place. She'd tell me, you should have finished school.
Well, there you go.
She asked me, are you going to go back and get those last 8 credits now? 'Cause I got picked up in modeling and I never finished, and it was my biggest regret. So she's like, so when is that going to happen? I know she would probably ask me that.
Right. Well, there you go.
Because she's got a motivator and she's up front.
Well, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Melissa, if people want to find out more information, they want to find out about your book, your companies, about you just in general, they want to join your community, what's the best way to do it?
It's we're on Facebook at Mom Queen Boutique, and then we have a private group called Mom Queen Boutique Queens. But you can always go to momqueenboutique.com. I have a blog, momqueen.com, and then you can get the book at basicbbook.com, excuse me.
And it's the word spelled out?
And then Amazon, Basic Bee Book, no.
It's the word B, or the letter B.
Yes.
Basic Bee Book. Okay, perfect.
And then it's also on Amazon. It's available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, everywhere.
Awesome. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Of course. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Another amazing woman here, and we're so glad that you were able to join us for this story. Of course, you can find us on all of your streaming services, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as Twitter at 6 p.m. Central Time on Wednesdays. We'll see you next week. If you'd like to nominate an inspiring woman, email me at sarahstrackhouse@gmail.com. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.